webinars about those summer food programs. My name is Nancy Lewis, and I work with child nutrition programs, which is the state agency, USDA programs like the school lunch programs and after-school snack and summer food programs. I'm the person that would help you administer.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone, to the second in a series of webinars about the summer food program. My name is Nancy Lewis, and I work with child nutrition programs, which is the state agency for USDA programs, which includes the summer food programs. I'm the person that helps you get set up on the system and get claims for reimbursement, and I provide training and technical assistance for the state around the summer food program. I'm also joined by Emily Glover. I'm going to turn it over to her so she can introduce herself.
Hi everyone, this is Emily Glover, and I work with Hunger Free Vermont as a summer food coordinator. Our organization is based in Burlington, and our mission is to end hunger among all Vermonters. And we do a lot of outreach along with programs including the Summer Food Program, 3 Squares Vermont, Child and Adult Care Food Program, and so forth. Some of you joined Nancy and I for the first webinar on February 28th, during which we explained the basics of the Summer Food Programs. If you were not able to join us for that webinar, you are more than welcome to watch a recording of it on our website, which is www.hungerfreevt.org. Keep in mind that it was not necessary for you to attend that webinar to participate in this webinar today. We're going to be delving into summer food programs in much greater detail in our time together today. I also want to thank my colleagues Laura Philbach and Jonathan Harris, who are working the phones and the computers and helping us to make sure that everything runs smoothly today. So thank you to them. Okay, before we begin, we would like to review the basic functions of the webinar technology. You should be able to see a small side panel on your screen. This is where you can see audio information, and this is also where you can ask questions. If your side panel is hidden, click on the arrow to open it. You can also use the arrow to minimize your side panel on your screen. Now, in the audio window of the side panel, you have the option of using a telephone to call into the webinar or using a microphone and speakers attached to your computer. Choose just one option. If you're using a telephone, the number to call, the access ID, and the PIN number you need are all listed. If you're having trouble hearing me or having trouble with your screen, you can email jharris@hungerfreevt.org, or you can call him at 865-0255. He is standing by ready to help you with the technology. We're also going to have a question and answer session toward the end of the webinar. There are 2 ways that you can ask questions. One way is to simply type your question into the question log on the side panel. All written questions will be recorded in a file, so if we're not able to answer all of them today, we'll follow up with everyone at the end of the webinar. You can also ask a live question. To do this, you simply click on the Raise Your Hand icon in your side panel. Laura, or our organizer, will see that your hand is raised, and she will unmute you so that you can ask your question for everyone to hear. If you choose to ask a live question, we ask that you speak into your telephone. We've had trouble in the past hearing people using a microphone on their computers. We also want to let you know that we're recording the entire webinar so that others can view it in the future. We will provide you with more information about the recording at the end of the webinar. That being said, we are ready to begin.
So we want to give you our agenda for the next hour. Emily and I are going to explain exactly what types of meals you can serve and how much you will be reimbursed for serving those meals. To give you a better understanding of how the program works, we're going to give you specific examples of 3 different summer food programs in Vermont. Each one is a little different, and we hope that they will give you a sense of all the players and responsibilities involved in running a successful food program. After looking at other Vermont programs, we're going to look a little closer at sponsor and site responsibilities. Finally, we'll conclude the webinar with your next steps and a question and answer session and some resources to get you started. So before we move into the first agenda item, we want to give you a job. So this is something for you to attend to while you're listening to the webinar. It is to listen closely to the responsibilities of summer food sites and the responsibilities of summer food sponsors. So sites versus sponsors. By the end of the webinar, we'd like you all to decide if you think your organization has the capacity to be a sponsor, to be a site, to be both a sponsor and a site, or if you need more information to make a decision. And then we're actually going to ask you that question in a poll at the end of the webinar. So just keep that thought, that question, that wondering in the back of your mind as we move ahead.
So we're all here today because we have an interest in feeding children. So let's begin by looking at the USDA guidelines surrounding meal production. Sponsors can get reimbursed for serving up to 2 meals a day. It can be any combination of breakfast, lunch, snack, and supper. So in this chart, you can see the meal components, which include milk, vegetables and or fruits, meat or meat alternate, grains, and bread. You can also see all the minimum serving sizes for each meal component. Now the serving sizes vary a little depending on the age of the children, but you need to serve at least the minimum portion size to get reimbursed. Now there are a few other things we want you to keep in mind when planning your meals. First, the meals need to be eaten in a congregate setting. This means that you can't deliver meals door to door, and you can't send a child away with meal. Kids need to eat together at a set meal time. And of course, we would encourage the adults to eat with the kids. Also keep in mind that a child must take all the meal components in order for the sponsor to get reimbursed. So for example, if a sponsor offers a cheese stick and an apple for a snack, a child must take both components. If the child only takes the cheese stick, the sponsor cannot claim the meal as reimbursable.
There are 2 summer food programs that reimburse communities or organizations for serving meals to children during the summer. There's the Seamless Summer option, and then there's the Summer Food Service Program. As you can see from the slide, the reimbursement rates vary a bit from one program to the other. The Summer Food Service Program reimbursement rates are higher, but that program comes with extra training and some extra paperwork requirements, which we'll explain later in the webinar. In the ideal situation, sponsors use the reimbursement rates to cover all their expenses, including staff salaries and meal costs. This is easier to do when a sponsor produces many meals for many sites. So there's a real scale, benefit to having scale and lots of meals served per labor hour in these programs. The greater the volume, the more sustainable the program will be. Some sponsors also bring in extra revenue by charging adults and parents for a meal. You are more than welcome to contact me or Emily for advice on how to make your program financially viable.
So Nancy and I would like to give you a few examples of summer food programs throughout Vermont. Our first stop is in Richford, Vermont. The Richford Elementary School sponsors the Summer Food Service Program, and they serve meals to children at the Richford Playground. So within each box on the screen here, you can see exactly which jobs each party is responsible for. As the sponsor, the Richford Elementary School submits the program application to the Department of Education, okay, so to Nancy. They do that every year. They prepare the meals according to the USDA regulations. They monitor the playground site to make sure that all the guidelines are being followed. They submit claims for reimbursement, and they also keep all the paperwork for 3 years in case the Department of Education comes for a review. Now, on the other side, as a summer food site, the staff at the Richford Playground are responsible for serving the meals to the children in a congregate setting. They keep track of exactly how many meals are served. They supervise the enrichment activities, and they also notify the sponsor of any factors that affect meal preparation, such as field trips and spikes or drops in participation. The staff at the playground don't interact with any money related to the food program. All of the kids receive a free meal, and the reimbursement money goes directly to the sponsor.
So we're going to contrast that with another example of a summer food program. This one is located in Burlington. The Burlington School District sponsors the Seamless Summer Option, and they serve meals to all of these sites and more. The Burlington School District performs the same jobs as the Richford sponsor. They fill out the applications, they prepare meals, they monitor sites, submit claims, and they keep a record of all their paperwork. Each site serves the meals. They keep a record of the meals served, they supervise the activities at the site, and they communicate regularly back with the sponsor. As you can imagine, this is a very large operation. It requires many staff members, year-round planning, and constant communication between the sponsors and the site. It's a very successful program that has grown throughout the years, and it ensures that children throughout Burlington have access to healthy, free meals.
Our final example is in Walcott. In this case, the Walcott Elementary School is both the sponsor and the site. The entire operation is housed under the same roof. So as you can see, the Walcott Elementary School has the same responsibilities as the sponsors and sites that we just described in Richford and Burlington. This system works pretty well in rural communities when you have small programs. So as you can see from the 3 examples we just gave you, there are many different ways to set up a summer food program. And as we continue through the webinar, we would encourage you to start thinking about the model that you think would work best for your community. Okay, so keep revisiting that question that Nancy posed at the beginning of the webinar. Can I be a sponsor, a site, both? What's going to work best for my community?
So let's take a closer look at the role a sponsor takes so that you can determine whether or not you have that capacity, whether or not you could become a sponsor. We mentioned earlier there are 2 programs that will reimburse communities for serving meals during the summer, and one is called the National School Lunch Program Seamless Summer Option, and the other is called the Summer Food Service. Both programs are funded by the United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA, and both are administered by the Vermont Department of Education, and that's where we child nutrition programs are housed. There are some differences in who can sponsor each program. Only schools can sponsor a Seamless Summer program. That's because the Seamless Summer Option is meant to be an extension of the regular school meal program. Seamless Summer Option, or SSO, sponsors have significantly less paperwork when it comes to summertime. And the training requirements, there are fewer training requirements than compared to the Summer Food Service Program, which, on the other hand, can be sponsored by a wide range of entities. Schools could be, a sponsor could be a unit of local, county, municipal, state, or federal government. Could be a private nonprofit organization or a nonprofit residential community. See that there's nonprofit common in all of those. Despite the amount of administrative work involved, many community organizations, including schools, choose to sponsor the Summer Food Service Program because of the higher reimbursement rate.
So being a sponsor really requires the highest level of commitment. They need to be able to provide a capable staff, managerial skills skills and food service capabilities. The sponsor is also responsible for arranging the meal service, but there's a lot of flexibility in how this is done. A sponsor may prepare its own meals. It can purchase meals from a nearby school, or it can even contract out for meals with a food vendor. Now, sponsors must participate in a training every year. Brand new sponsors who sponsor the Summer Food Service Program, they'll need to attend a mandatory training sometime in May. Both new and returning sponsors are encouraged to attend the annual SFSP and CACFP conference, and this is also a good conference for seamless summer option programs, even though it's not listed there in the title. This year, that conference will be held on April 28th at the Lake Maury Resort in Fairleigh. We are expecting some really excellent workshops and panelists to speak about the best practices related to summer food, and we'll provide you with more information about that conference later on. All SSO and SFSP sponsors need to submit a letter of intent, an application, and other related documentation to the Department of Education. Prior to the start of the summer food program, sponsors need to train all of their staff members or volunteers that will be involved in cooking or distributing meals. Most sponsors conduct this training in late May or early June, and this is something that Nancy and I can help you with as well. Sponsors need to monitor, which is another way of saying visit, every site at least twice during the summer to make sure that the food is being distributed according to the program regulations. Finally, sponsors need to keep a record of all the paperwork for 3 years, plus the current year, in case the Department of Education comes for a review.
So let's talk now about the responsibilities of a site. Before children can eat, the food needs to get transported to the site location. Some sites arrange for staff members or volunteers to pick up the meals from the sponsor. Other sponsors have the capacity to deliver the meals directly to the site location. In either scenario, the site supervisors need to ensure that the meals are stored in coolers at a safe temperature until it's time to eat. Site supervisors have several tasks to oversee at mealtime. First, they need to make sure that all meals are eaten on site. As we said earlier, the meals cannot be taken home. Sites need to keep track of exactly how many meals are served, and they keep track of that on a form that is later returned to the sponsor. You can call this form the moneymaker. The sponsor uses the information to submit claims for reimbursement, so it's very important that it be completed accurately and promptly. Sponsors also need to make sure that the meals are served in safe and sanitary conditions. And finally, as we mentioned earlier, the site supervisors need to ensure that each child takes all the meal components. Otherwise, the sponsor will not get reimbursed for the meal. Site supervisors need to inform sponsors of any factors that affect meal preparation, including field trips, drops in participation, or spikes. We also encourage sites to tell sponsors exactly which meals are well received. Meals are not so popular among them. The communication helps the sponsor to fine-tune the menus, and it ensures that children are happy with food. So as you can see, you can imagine that there needs to be ongoing feedback back and forth between the site, which delivers the food to the kids, and whoever the kitchen or whoever is producing the food, and planning for the amounts of food that need to be served, making sure there's a whole management piece there that requires some close communication. Finally, most sites plan and organize activities for children. That's a great way to get kids to the site. So we're interested in feeding them, but often the food is being delivered in conjunction with other activities. Sites are not required to do this, but we found that kids are attracted to sites that offer both food and quality activities.
So now that you know about the responsibility of sites, I want to go into the different types of sites. There are 3 different types of sites. The ideal situation is to be an open site. Your program would qualify as an open site if 50% or more of the children at the local school qualify for free or reduced price meals. In this scenario, every child would get a free meal regardless of family income, and the sponsor would get reimbursed at the highest reimbursement rate. The second type of site is closed enrolled, and this is really the next best scenario. In this case, 50% or more of the children who register for the summer program qualify for free reduced price meals. So the difference between an open site and closed enrolled is at the open site, the kids at the school meet that 50% mark. In closed enrolled, 50% of the kids in the summer program meet that 50% mark. In a closed enrolled scenario, every child again would get a free meal, and the sponsor would get reimbursed at the highest rate. The third type of site is a campsite. In this scenario, less than 50% of the kids qualify for free or reduced price meals, and or the enrollment changes on a regular basis. Okay, so if you have different groups of kids coming in throughout the summer, completely different groups of kids, then you need to be a campsite. In this case, the children who are eligible for free or reduced price meals would get a free meal, and the sponsor would get reimbursed at the highest rate. But children who do not qualify for free or reduced price meals would have to pay for their meals, or the summer program would have to shoulder the cost. Please keep in mind that this is usually the most difficult part of the program to understand, so don't be discouraged if you're confused about the different types of sites. Nancy and I can help you decide exactly which type of site you have and what it means for the children and the sponsor.
So we are nearing the end of the presentation and getting to an opportunity for you to ask questions, but before we do that, we want to return to the task we gave you at the beginning. In just a moment, we're going to ask you all to indicate what role your organization has the capacity to fulfill. In other words, does your organization have the capacity to become a sponsor, a site, both a sponsor and a site, or do you need more information? I'm going to ask our organizer, Laura, to go ahead and post the question. Please take a moment to click on your answer now. We'll wait just a few seconds for everyone to share their answer, and then we'll show the results. Okay, everyone's responded. Thank you.
So we're going to go ahead and share those poll results. And it looks like a number of you feel like you could become both a sponsor and a site, or just a site, and that's great. For those of you who need more information, we are certainly available to provide that. And we're happy to provide you with resources for all of you to move forward and take the next steps. So, speaking of next steps, we're going to take a minute to talk about the actions you need to take now to prepare for your summer food program. If you decide you'd like to become a sponsor, you need to fill out that intent to participate form that I mentioned earlier, and you need to submit it to the Department of Education. SFSP sponsors need to submit it by April 15th, and Seamless Summer Option sponsors need to submit the form by June 1st. Now, you don't need to worry about finding those forms, because within the next day or two, Nancy and I will follow up with an email that includes a link to that form and instructions for how to fill it out. Once the Department of Education receives your form, they will send you the links to the online application materials with complete instructions. Keep in mind that everyone is more than welcome to contact us for support when filling out the paperwork. If you were one of the people who decided that you could become a site, we would really encourage you to call Nancy or myself so that we can help you identify and approach the nearest sponsor in your community. It's not at all uncommon for new sites to reach out to existing sponsors. We spend a great deal of time in the spring just connecting sponsors and sites for the summer.
We'd like to take some time now to answer questions that you have. So you can either type your questions into the question box, or you can raise your hand and ask a live question. Our organizer, Laura, will either read your question out loud or she will let you know that you've been unmuted so you can ask your question for everyone to hear.
So Laura, do we have any questions?
Yes, we have a question from Gail Cornelius. Go ahead, Gail. Gail, can you ask your question? I'm afraid we aren't hearing you, so if you can type it into the question box, I can go ahead and read it. I'm sorry that the volume doesn't seem to be working with your computer. In the meantime, we have a question from Amy that says, how do I need to have a kitchen on the site?
That is a really easy question to answer. It is no. The food could be delivered site, prepared or packaged, or assembled in a different location and just brought to the location where the kids are. You just have to attend to safety and sanitation rules.
She also wants to know, how do you connect with food vendors?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I think that's something we would need to take some time to explore. If you didn't have a way to have your food produced, Emily or I would work with you to find out who in the area could produce the food for you. We have different vendors who are supplying summer food. We also have different sponsors who are providing food and may have the capacity to act sort of as a vendor for you. There's just a lot of possibilities. So if you don't have a way to get the food, don't have the capacity to produce the food yourself, we'd explore finding a producer for you.
Great. We have Gail's question, which is, can food be transported in insulated lunch bags with an ice pack in the bag? This would facilitate some off-site activities that are planned.
Yes, Gail, thanks for your question. That's actually how a lot of the larger sponsors and sites run their operations. So the sponsor will prepare the meals, put them in coolers according to specific temperatures. Okay, so if they're cold meals, they need to be kept at a certain temperature. If they're hot meals, they need to be kept at a certain temperature. And then they're either picked up by the site supervisors or they're delivered directly to the site. So you will need to purchase those coolers before the start of the program. And then each program has a way of coordinating that transportation so that the coolers get back and forth.
And I'm also hearing that maybe you're talking about some individual bagged lunches where kids might hike to the top of a mountain. So yes, that's an option. Any way you can make it happen. We do want to know when you're off-site. We'd have to look at when are those field trips happening and how does that happen in relationship to the kids that you're serving. If you said, oh, I'm going to be an open site and anybody could come in during the week, they'd want to know that they were going on a field trip that day, and you'd want to plan for it. But yes, you can take food as a group together off. You could put them in bags. You could package it in a way so the milk stays cold. Yeah, all options.
We have a question from Deborah that says, We won't find out about our grant for our summer program till later in April. Do we still submit a letter of intent and the application?
Yes, you do. There is a federal requirement that the applications get completed in our system by June 15th. We, as the state, have said that that process needs to be completed by June 1st, and even earlier for programs that are asking for commodities or to use advanced money. But you could submit an intent later. The reason we put the deadline on is to take care of the capacity we have as a department to respond to people and everyone in a timely manner. But if you, let's say, wanted to run a program in August, we could take your application in at a later time. So there is flexibility there.
And also keep in mind that if you submit your intent to participate form by the deadline and you find that you can't get your grant and your program is not going to operate in the summer, you can call Nancy and let her know that you're going to need to retract that intent to participate form, and that's fine. There's no penalty for having to cancel that, but we certainly don't like to see it happen if possible.
We have another question from Gail. Where do you recommend the poster be placed?
So the poster that Gail's referring to is called, it says in big letters, "And Justice for All," and that needs to be posted at all site locations to confirm that you are serving meals regardless of race or gender and all of these things. If you have meals that are going out to different sites, you can do a couple of things. One is you can actually post that poster right on your cooler, and the cooler is going to be wherever the food and the kids are, so that way it's visible, it's there. If you have kids who are eating in a cafeteria or in some room, you can post it there. It just needs to be wherever the kids are eating.
Are there any other questions? It doesn't look like we have any more questions.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next slide. And oh, it looks like we have one more.
Okay, we do have another question from Laura. Hoops. I am taking over the coordinator's position at our nonprofit organization. While we have been sponsoring a summer nutrition program for a number of years, and the school that is serving as our site has received training and is experienced running this program, this will be my first year coordinating. Do I need to receive new SFSP training, or is it sufficient to attend the annual training at Lake Maury?
Okay, that's a great question, Laura. If you attended, all right, let me make it simplest. Yes, as a new administrator, we would be noticing that for that sponsor that there's a new administrator. We'd be picking it up at the time that you did the application, and we'd be sort of highlighting you as not only needing training, we would come and do a review of your site this year. That's one of the ways that we pick sponsors for reviews. That being said, and given the experience that your organization has, and also we'd work with you and see if you thought this worked for you, you could come to the Lake Maury training, bring any questions that you have. We'll have all the information and materials there for a new sponsor or a new, in your case, a new administrator, to get the information and get questions answered about all aspects of running either of the summer programs. So that could cover as your mandatory training. The mandatory training is for the summer food service program. So I don't know which I guess you said it's a nonprofit. So it's a summer food service program that's been run. And there's a requirement there that at least one person from the sponsor gets trained every year. And that person is then responsible for making sure the rest of the staff is trained. The Lake Maury event will have a lot of experienced sponsors there and summer food providers and panelists, and it's kind of targeting at people who have some experience because it gets kind of boring if you've been doing this for a while, to come hear about the basic requirements over and over again. But we can certainly cover the basic requirements. There's a lot that's going to be covered in the sessions as we're having the discussions, and then I could also work with you one-to-one. So if you're concerned about, that question about whether or not that would cover your mandatory training, in your case, yes, it would.
All right, we have another question now from Amity. How do you know how much food to provide? If you prepare too much food, you do not get reimbursed for it, correct?
That's correct, and management and planning is really important, and again, we're going to talk about that whole planning part of it at Lake Maury. So you would be looking at the site. You have to look at what the setup is of your program. You have kids that are enrolled. You have a sense of how many would be showing up on any particular day. If it's an open community site, some of that is going to come from experience. You'll find out in a community about how many kids come each day. So you might need feedback of a few days of serving so you know how much to deliver. But there are a few ways to get there, and I think it's really important that you do plan for it and plan closely so that you don't have a lot of waste, but that you also have enough food. It's really important, especially with an open site, if you say the food's going to be there, that there is enough food provided for people who show up for meals to be served. So we could talk some more about that offline if you wanted to see for your particular situation what might be some options.
Right, and just as another example, I met with a potential summer food program in Bethel and Randolph yesterday, and they were exploring the same question. Right now we're projecting that we're going to have 60 kids, and the food service director who will be preparing the meals was saying, well, how do we know if it's more or less, and how do we prepare for that? And just as Nancy said, it's a little bit of a trial and error the first week, and just figuring out who's going to need what. So again, there are lots of suggestions for eliminating waste and making sure you have enough meals for kids, but just expect that there's going to be a little bit of trial and error in that first week, and that's fine.
And just, to point out what's being honed in on here is the idea that the reimbursement is for the meal served to a child. It is not for the cost to prepare, their cost of the food. It's really for the meal served. And so that does take a little bit of planning, because you've got to go backwards from there to look at your expenses for staff and your travel expenses and storage and all of those different things. So it gets a little tricky, but it is per meal. So that's how you would count your projections of income.
Okay, that looks like all the questions we have today.
Great. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question. Those were great questions. Let's move on to resources. We don't want you to walk away empty-handed. So as I mentioned earlier, within the next day or two, you will receive a follow-up email with additional resources. We're going to send everyone a link to more information about the annual SFSP CACFP conference in Fairleigh. Now, like I said earlier, that title is a little misleading. Any summer food sponsor can go. You can be any SFSP, right, any summer food provider can go. That includes sponsors of SFSP, sponsors of SSO, and all sites. So it's open to anyone. We also want to send you some summer food best practices related to meal production, outreach, and the eating environment. And we hope that this will be a valuable resource for you as you begin to plan your summer food program. We also want to send you some menus that have been tested by the real critics, which are the children. So if you can look through those, and you're more than welcome to incorporate some of those menus into your own. Finally, we're going to send everyone a recording of this webinar presentation so that you can watch it again, or you can share it with others. And one thing that I didn't put on here was that we'll send you the links to the intent to participate forms if you decide to become a sponsor.
We also want to remind everyone that we're going to have one more webinar in this series, and that's scheduled for May 4th. And during that webinar, we're going to have both new and returning summer food providers going to give them an opportunity to ask questions and share ideas related to meal production, transportation, and more. And we think this will be a great opportunity for to troubleshoot challenges that they've had in the past and to share innovative strategies, make your program the best it can be. So that being said, we want to thank everyone for joining us today, and we hope to hear from you soon.